So I just saw Ghost in the Shell 2017, and I wanted to share my thoughts about why I think this film isn't getting the right attention it truly deserves. Before this movie even hit the screen, I was also caught up in the mindset that this was just another soulless adaptation of a pretty good anime that casted white actors in place of Japanese actors in order to get more money maybe. Guys, speaking as a fan of video games, I've lived through a gauntlet of disappointing adaptations of the source material, and I would be lying if I didn't admit that sometimes the occasional bit of gold floated to the top of the trash heap, but ultimately, I watched a lot of trash. No matter what the source material may be, there's always the risk that comes with adapting any material that has a beloved fanbase behind it into a 90-minute feature film. It always creates a rift of naysayers, devout hopefuls, and the "I don't know what this is and I just wandered into the theater" moviegoers. Ghost in the Shell isn't exactly a household name in the West, so I do understand why Rupert Sanders casted Scarlett Johansson. She's an actress that has more star power than Rinko Kikuchi, who would have been my ideal choice. But let's face it, outside of Pacific Rim and Kumiko the Treasure Hunter, how many people in America would have been familiar with her past work? Quick aside, go watch Pacific Rim and Kumiko the Treasure Hunter. When I hear about the criticism surrounding this movie, it's not about the movie itself. There's usually two main complaints I hear over and over again, and it's typically from people who didn't even bother to go out and see it. Look at the box office. I know you didn't see it. You went to go see Boss Baby, didn't you? Didn't you? The first complaint is with Scarlett Johansson's acting, calling her a shitty, emotionless actress. And the second being, you knew this was coming, the whitewashing argument. Let's address the first one. As mentioned, Scarlett wasn't my first pick for Major. I think we were all a little disappointed to hear that they didn't even try to seek out an Asian woman in Hollywood to play the Major. But at the end of it all, isn't equal opportunity at its core about selecting the best person for the job? Scarlett Johansson is more than just a pretty face, and even though she's likely casted mostly on her looks, I did have some faith in her ability to carry the film after watching her performance in Under the Skin, one of the more obscure films on her acting resume, but a chilling and noteworthy performance that demonstrated her understanding of what it's like to be unfamiliar with the skin you live in. You know, partially the whole theme of Ghost in the Shell. In Under the Skin, Scarlett plays an alien/succubus living inside the flesh of a human that uses the allure of her physicality and persuasive voice to lure men into her lair, where then she feasts upon them after dipping them in black goo. I'm not sure how it works, but it was pretty spooky. An interesting note about this film is that Scarlett actually drove around Scotland picking up men and convincing them to get in the van. None of these men were actors, by the way, and then they were retrofitted into the script. That's a pretty good actress. She is pretty good looking, but please pick me up, ScarJo. I'll gladly walk into your death pool. I'm ready to be covered in black goo. She gives a haunting performance and she doesn't speak many lines. It's purely a physical role. It's an untypical role for someone like Scarlett, who's in every big budget Marvel movie and rom-com. I think she's gotten a bad rep because she starred in Lucy, which if you haven't seen, it's Luc Besson's worst film, and it's not representative of all the other great stuff he's created like The Fifth Element or Leon the Professional. It's kind of hard to walk off the "we don't even use 100% of our brains" false fact. And this totally hasn't been done before. Original concept. Please ignore Limitless. I'm Luc Besson. I made The Fifth Element. Go see my film. Even though Lucy was successful in the box office, ever since she's been pigeonholed as a shitty actress. And it's really sad because she's not. She's just not. And she always does the best she can with the source material she's given. Here in GitS, she's given the role of Major, aka a sentient brain transplanted into the shell of a human, basically the female version of RoboCop with more maneuverability. Now, I'm speaking from the heart here. I generally thought she did a great performance. She's definitely no Mary Elizabeth McGlynn, but Ghost in the Shell standalone complex gave more development to the character of Major than any other version of Ghost in the Shell. It's kind of a Kevin Conroy versus Christian Bale situation here. Everyone knows Kevin Conroy is the definitive version of Batman in their mind, but when Christian Bale steps into the role, sometimes we can understand that this is a different take, a more lispy and raspy version of Batman, but still ultimately a good take, and I think that's the same case here with Scarlet. A large chunk of the movie is about her trying to regain her humanity and understand what it was like to once have feelings and know what touch was like. There's not a whole lot to the character of Major beyond that. The Major's a badass and they needed a high energy superstar to fulfill that role. And I think when this movie finally comes out in the East, I don't think one person out there is going to be complaining that Scarlet misrepresented the Major in any offensive way. A quick comparison I can make to a male counterpart is like Harrison Ford in Blade Runner. Harrison Ford delivers the most wooden, deadpan, alleged android performance out of any leading man that I've known, especially if you listen to him phone it in the director's cut narration.
Whatever was in the bathtub was not human. Replicants don't have scales. And family photos? Replicants didn't have families either.
Arguably, Rutger Hauer is totally underrated in this film as Roy Batty. The tears in the rain line, just every time gets to me. It's not just Harrison Ford's performance that makes you come back to that movie and remember it. It's little vignettes all throughout. It's the atmosphere. It's the music, the one-off characters. That weird scene where Harrison Ford rapes Sean Young. It's what keeps us all coming back years later. Now, to address the second point of whitewashing, let's talk about the ensemble cast. Because it's not all just a bunch of white people that showed up to replace all the Asian actors one day. Beat Takeshi steals the fucking show in this. He's no less intimidating. He's no way emasculated by white actors. He speaks every line in 100% Japanese. I bet, they probably told him to speak English and he said, "No, fuck you. I am Sonatine." That's probably his hair, too. That's probably Beat Takeshi's real hair. But every scene in the movie that he's in, he owns it. This is distinctly a Beat Takeshi film as much as it's a Scarlett Johansson film. The whole whitewashing argument would make sense if there weren't Japanese actors all throughout the film. Let alone Scarlett Johansson is Jewish herself, but I guess we're only looking at her skin.
That's not my problem. It's yours.
Spoiler alert here, but the whole crux of the story is that Scarlett Johansson's brain actually belongs to a Japanese woman named Motoko, and when she finally figures out her true identity, she reconnects with her culture, reconnects with the old world, reconnects with her Japanese ancestry, and realizes the true weight and crime of having her humanity and culture stripped away from her. It's a film about the detriments of being whitewashed in a sense, and to be replaced by these artificial constructs. An instant gratification. In the entire film, no one's satisfied with who they are, what their skin is, what their eyes are like. They get augmentations to enhance their flaws. And yet there's this really somber scene where the Major goes down to the red light district and finds a prostitute who's wearing a mask to cover her freckled skin, who's obviously not satisfied with the way she looks, and the Major strokes her face and then shows this sign of envy that what's it like to feel, what's it like to have that skin, and truly marvels at this prostitute like she's the most beautiful creature in the world. I feel like the message of owning your identity and being proud of your heritage was lost on the people who didn't go out to see the movie. I also want to make a special note. The guy who played Batao, his name is Pilo Asbake. He is phenomenal. He looks like Kiefer Sutherland in his prime, but he's got great comedic timing. He has the Batao look down. I couldn't picture anyone else. Immediately I was like, I want an entire film about him. typically I would fall in line with this whole, this is kind of shitty because of the whitewashing argument, just because I've seen Dragon Ball Evolution. Like that, if anyone, where were you guys when Dragon Ball Evolution came out? They had to re-edit the film to make Piccolo green. Like, what the fuck? I was one of the people leading the charge on Green Lives Matter. Where were you? Visually, Ghost in the Shell is what I would expect that Blade Runner 2047 should look like. I mean, it's got some very good cyberpunk elements, but also that spooky dystopia where advertisements are just flooding the streets like a Ray Bradbury nightmare. I think this film just got a bad rap that it couldn't shake off. I mean, when the boss baby is out there pulling in more asses and chairs, you know some shit went down. If you go into the film and you keep an open mind and you want to see something that has some great callbacks to the original Ghost in the Shell. I mean, for the most part, it's fairly faithful, and the deviations it does take overall enhance the plot. And I think by the end of it, I was just sitting there in my seat, just flabbergasted, thinking it was going to be an absolute steaming pile. And by the end, I wanted to see a sequel. I think this truly has more potential, but I think it's destined to be a cult success on DVD and Blu-ray. That's sadly what the fate of this is going to be, because either too niche of a franchise or too many people complaining about white people, even though it's pretty much a 50-50 cast. It's a blend of East meets West, and I think it's going to do gangbusters internationally. I mean, if the Warcraft movie can do it, this one definitely can. That's my little rant. Go see Ghost in the Shell. If you hate it, come back here and tell me how stupid I am, but I guarantee you're going to find something in there to like. Don't go in with any prejudices. Just go in and watch it as a standalone film. You'll have a good time. If you're a fan of Blade Runner, if you're a fan of RoboCop, if you're just a fan of good sci-fi, this deserves your time.